Hey everybody, it's MotherGoose27 and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about Warhammer once again. I have some sad news actually. Recently, ItalianSpartacus got to do an interview with Andy Hall, and it was mostly about Kislev and Cathay, but at the very end, ItalianSpartacus asked about kingdoms like Nippon, Khuresh, and I almost said Nippon again. And Andy Hall basically confirmed that they have seen the roadmap and none of these factions are on it. And this doesn't just include these three, there's some others which we'll talk about later in the video. And that kind of sucks. I'm about to play that clip here in a second, but I just wanted to read an interview we got from C.A. Ben on Discord. This quote basically already confirmed what Andy Hall was saying, but I feel like it's important to just talk about both things. So C.A. Ben said, "We're not diving into specifics about post-launch content until we get the game in your hands, but I can say the interpretation of mode or map specific factions isn't right. That's not a thing for us." So that's basically in context to the Russian interview where it got translated, I think, from English to Russian and then back to English, and there was a quote basically saying that there might be some immortal empires or whatever the combined map is called, specific factions, which gave hope for factions like in Nippon and Khuresh, but that basically confirmed that wasn't going to be the case, which when looking at the map of the campaign, unless they did some really big map expansions, which we didn't really see in Total War Warhammer 2, there's no way they could fit those factions inside the current campaign map. Which, in terms of that interview, we get mentioned again here in Andy Hall's part, which I'm going to play for you now.
As it pertains to, there's all these publications that have swung up around End and Khuresh and all these things as it relates to the Immortal Empires map. I think it was like a Russian publication that had said there's plenty of these other factions that are planned and what have you. I don't know how in depth or even at all you can talk about this subject, but Ind, Khuresh, these nations that are Nippon that we just mentioned just a little bit ago, are there plans for that kind of stuff in the Immortal Empires, or is that just kind of a red herring that was given? Or I guess how can you elaborate more on that?
Okay, what I will say, because I was part of some of those interviews, is don't underestimate the power of Google Translate to to translate into English and misquote people or say something that's more definitive than it was said to the actual journalist at the time. Also, people have got to not confuse world building, bringing the world to life by referencing stuff that isn't on the map or is an event to some kind of announcement. That's certainly not the case. So we will never. I'm going to give you the answer I've given many kind of media outlets. We're never going to say never, because there should always be that opportunity to bring these new races in or new nations.
The door ajar.
If we want to, the door is ajar. But I've seen the roadmap, and these nations aren't on there now. There is no plans to do them in the immediate or even long-term future. We've still got so much to do with Cathay. Honestly, the stuff I've seen, it'll curl your toes in the best possible way. It's going to be cool as hell. So yeah, people are kind of desperately hanging on for one of these other nations. I'm not even going to name them because I know that will make the internet blow up.
Yeah.
Don't lose any sleep. It's not happening anytime soon. Probably never, I'm afraid. Cathay was a brilliant coup for us. Doesn't mean it's going to be repeated.
So basically, what does that interview show us? We most likely will not get Ind, Khuresh, Nippon. That probably includes stuff like the Kurgan or the Tribes of Chaos, most likely the Hobgoblins for faction or race packs, which does suck. I know a lot of people were really hoping for them, but it does show that the devs are very committed to the factions they already have in the game. We know that this game is supposed to have a long lifespan, so if they're not going to be putting work into all these factions, that means they're going to be putting more work into the factions we already have and the couple DLC factions we will actually get, just to make them as good as they actually can be, which I still think is great. I personally want to see as many factions as we can get in the game, but making sure the factions we do get are as good as they possibly can be by the end of its lifespan still is great. Now, this also excludes other factions that people were hoping for, like the Amazons, Araby, and Albion are the three I can think of off the top of my head, that if they had been implemented would have been Immortal Empires, or whatever it's called, exclusive factions as well. So with that quote and this interview, that is a lot of factions we know that we're most likely not going to get within the game. Doesn't mean we never will, doesn't mean plans won't change. No, there's always a chance at these things, but for now, they are not currently on the table. Right now, they just don't have plans for these factions. But that does leave us with a few hints for who we're actually going to be getting in terms of DLC factions. For sure, the Chaos Dwarves, there's no doubt. There's no doubt they're coming into the game. Nagash will be in the game. I'm not entirely sure at this point how they'll implement him. Either he'll be part of the Tomb Kings, or the Vampire Counts, or he might be a sub-faction / hybrid faction, or he might get his own faction. But Nagash will most likely be in the game in some faction. And then we still have hope for the Dogs of War, which could implement some really cool units still into the Dogs of War from factions that we won't get. And most likely, we're going to be getting a ton of Lord packs. I'm really excited for what they have planned for Cathay. It seems like Andy Hall's really excited, and that makes me excited. Cathay's the faction I'm most excited for, and I'm really happy to know that they've got a lot planned for them in the future. And there's also the chance that we might start getting character packs where it's basically like a Lord pack, but it's just Lords and Heroes, excluding units, which I think could be interesting if done correctly. A couple race / faction DLCs, quite a few Lord packs, and maybe some character packs are what we can expect in terms of DLC. We'll also get tons of FLC as well throughout its lifespan. I don't think anyone would be surprised by that. Now, we got to talk about it. It is completely okay if you're disappointed by this news. It is completely okay if you're sad. It's completely okay if you're mad about this. Like, a lot of people were really, really hoping for these factions, and I know a lot of people weren't. You might be watching this video and thinking there was no way they're coming into the game anyway, like at all, but a lot of people did have hopes for them, and so it's completely okay to be disappointed by this. I'm disappointed by this news. Like, I was one of those ones who's really hoping for these factions. I mean, my most popular videos are literally me talking about these obscure factions that I really wish we could see in the game, but at the end of the day, it's okay that they're not going to be. But just remember that this is not one person's fault. This is not one person's doing. No one on the CA team or the Games Workshop team deserves any hate for this. Don't go give Andy Hall hate. This was not his decision. He was just the one to give us the news. And just remember that there is always hope that maybe these factions might still be in the game someday. And also, I think it's a lot better that they told us this news now, instead of us waiting 5 years and them saying the game's done and us all being disappointed that these factions weren't in there. Like, we can go into their post-launch DLC 4 or 5 year season, however long it is, knowing full well that we're not getting these factions. I think that's going to save a lot of people from being disappointed in the long run. Now, I do think this was a little bit of bad timing for this news to come out, like right before the game launched. It probably would have been better if they confirmed it as they were starting to show off what they had plans for their DLC roadmap. This, just being honest, for myself, really hurt my excitement for the game. Will it affect me overall? No, not at all. Will it affect you overall? Probably not. But it does kind of suck being really sad about this right before it launches. But again, it really is okay. And with that, I really don't know what to do. with my channel, if you're still here, to kind of get off from the interview, my possible but unlikely Total War Warhammer 3 faction series was getting pretty close to complete. I had End left, I had the Hobgoblins left, and then I was considering talking about Albion, Amazon, and Araby as potential Immortal Empires exclusive maps, and how I think they could have implemented that. Literally saying I'm probably not going to talk about it. All they had to do was, if you bought a faction that was specific to the Immortal Empires, you would get Immortal Empires. You wouldn't have to have 1 and 2. You just wouldn't be able to play the 1 and 2 factions, but you could still play as the new DLC you just bought for that map. I figured I'd just get that out there now. I was planning to make a whole video on it, but we already know that that's not going to happen. So I'm really not sure if I'm going to continue the possible but unlikely Total War Warhammer faction series, just because it's basically been confirmed they're not coming. So I don't really know. As soon as the game launches, I'm planning to hit like actual gameplay content really hard. Battles. I'm for sure gonna do a Cathay campaign. I'm for sure gonna do a Demons of Chaos campaign. I'll probably do a Kislev campaign, just to unlock Boris. Spoilers, sorry, but you probably already knew. So actually playing the game, there's a ton of content coming, but in terms of like lore and stuff, I don't really know what's left, because most of the big channels have covered in depth all of the factions that we know we're going to get, and I have covered most of the obscure factions that most likely weren't going to be in the game, but could be based on location. Like, that's the whole point of that series. And so, yeah, I don't really know. Do you guys want to see more lore content, or should I just focus on actual gameplay once it comes out? Let me know in the comments below. Also, let me know what you think about this news. Are you sad about it? Are you happy that this means they can focus more on the factions that will be in the game? Are you unaffected? You were the person that said, like, I never thought these factions were in the game, so I'm not surprised at all. Let's talk about it. Let's have a discussion in the comments below. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Mother Goose out.